Hi everyone! So in this video I'm going to be adding to my previous video, How to Look Expensive, and I'm going to be adding my top 5 most expensive smelling fragrances. If you haven't checked out that video, I highly recommend it. It's going to give you my best tips and tricks to pick your own expensive smelling fragrance, and also continue watching this video if you want to hear my favorite expensive smelling fragrances for men. If this is the kind of fragrance content that you like to watch, please consider subscribing and liking this video. The first expensive smelling fragrance that I want to talk about today is also the most expensive fragrance on this list, and this is Roja Dove's Alciem. And this is an expensive smelling fragrance that is a crowd pleaser. So sometimes with these more refined smelling fragrances, it's hard to find, it's a fine line between something that smells really good and something that smells refined and kind of keeps at a distance. I find this really is in between. It's a fragrance that people really love, that I think gets a lot of compliments, that many people actually do find very likable and very sexy. But because of this kind of vetiver pairing with the amber in the accord, it's a very like fruity, woody fragrance. It is such an expensive fragrance that very, very few people do wear Alciem by Roja Dove. However, the type of fragrance we've seen before, it does get a lot of comparisons to Bleu de Chanel or Aventus Creed. In my opinion, it's still a completely different fragrance on its own. Bleu de Chanel, especially in the EDT version, does have something a little bit more sharp to it. The Aventus Creed is a bit more smoky. And again, here we have a really nice vetiver that rounds out all these other normal kind of like fruity, woody, ambery notes, and makes it very refined and very elegant. If you're a signature scent as opposed to a wardrobe type of person, I really suggest smelling out Alciem because I feel like it'll fit a lot of different events that you need to go to. It's a fragrance that works well for the office or more formal events, even like a nice evening dinner. I don't feel like it has the projection or longevity for beast mode or opposed to like nights out dancing or at the club, but pretty much all other social events. It fits really, really well, and it's just a great smelling fragrance. So even though the price point is a bit high, I think it's really worth looking into just because of its sheer likability. It's going to please a lot of people while still not going, just into kind of base desire territory. It's not overtly sexy. It's just an all-around great fragrance. The next elegant smelling and expensive smelling fragrance on my list is Cuir d'Ange in the Hermescence collection of Hermes. And if anyone was going to do a refined and elegant leather, it was going to be Hermes, obviously. And this fragrance is by Jean-Claude Ellena, who really is one of the greatest perfumers of our time. He was the in-house perfumer for Hermes for many, many years. And Hermes is one of those brands where you can really go in, and I think we would be very hard-pressed to pick a bad fragrance. I really can't even think of a bad Hermes fragrance off the top of my head. And so that's a really safe house to go to if you're looking for a more expensive fragrance. But really, Cuir d'Ange is like the most expensive, refined smelling pair of just the smoothest leather gloves. And so if you're looking for that in a fragrance, this is it, and it's definitely worth a smell. With the rest of this list, we are getting into more affordable territory. So the rest of the 3 fragrances on this list are under 150 euros or dollars, and most of them are under $100. So if Roja Dove or Hermes is like, oof, yeah, okay, expensive smelling fragrances are really expensive, you definitely don't need to break the bank to smell expensive. And my number 1 pick is under $100. So that's always good news. So number 3 is Vetiver by Diptyque. I feel like this is an incredibly underrated vetiver fragrance. I don't hear it talked as much compared to others like Tom Ford's vetiver, for example, but I think this one, which is also a great vetiver, I have to say, but this one is a personal favorite just because it also has citrus, spicy, and geranium notes, making it very refined and feeling like a very complete fragrance. It's a fragrance that kind of evolves as time goes on, which I always find really interesting. interesting. Again, it depends on my mood. And even though it's an evolving fragrance, it's still a super easy wear, really easy to splash on before you go. Very likable as well, but also super refined, fitting a lot of different occasions, but especially those more buttoned up, going to the office or a formal event type of fragrance. What I also like about this fragrance is that yes, I find it very formal, but it's not cold or it's not distant, and you also don't smell it as much on other people. Another very popular fragrance is Terre de Hermes, which again, as I said when I was talking about Cuir d'Ange, Hermes is a great line for more formal, elegant fragrances. The reason that Terre de Hermes is not going to be on this list and why I chose Vetiver is because everyone wears Terre de Hermes. There have been so many times where I meet someone for the first time and they're wearing Terre de Hermes, and I haven't seen that as much with any other fragrance. And it could be because I live in Europe. Maybe in the States you're smelling more Bleu de Chanel and things like that, but really every other guy I meet is wearing Terre de Hermes, and it is a great fragrance. It's very pleasant, but I think it's so often found now that I try to recommend other fragrances for men to wear. The next fragrance I'm going to be talking about is Pour Monsieur by Chanel. So here we're getting into one of the great classic fragrances. Pour Monsieur was released in 1955. It's thought to be the only men's fragrance released while Coco Chanel's tenure was going on at Chanel. And it's an incredible fragrance. It is a bright lemon with notes of geranium and then oak moss. And despite, sometimes fragrances with oak moss can smell a bit dated, I think because lemon and geranium and, so many of the materials in this fragrance are still so often used, it doesn't smell dated at all to me. It smells really lovely. It smells super elegant, and it's one of those fragrances that has stood the test of time. And so there's never going to be any point in your life where Pour Monsieur is going to smell dated on you, because at this point, it's lasted like 75 years and it still smells amazing. So if you just want, if maybe you don't have so many occasions where you need to smell expensive, and that's this kind of more formal genre of perfumery is not your passion, but you want something for when you go to weddings or certain other formal events, I think Pour Monsieur could be an excellent choice for that, because it's never going to be a fragrance that ages. Next on my list is Lalique Encre Noire. I have talked about Lalique Encre Noire possibly in every video I've talked about, probably not every video, but it's a fragrance that you must have in your collection. Again, it's one of the best vetivers out there. You can get a bottle for around $40 max. I have seen bottles as low as $26 for 100 milliliters. I wax poetic about this fragrance every time I talk about it. It's a dark inky vetiver. It smells super refined, super classy, and it's insanely affordable while still smelling very expensive and unique. So always worth checking out Encre Noire. And last on my list is Héritage by Guerlain. This fragrance was released in 1992, and it's really interesting because there's a lot of fragrances from like the 80s and 70s and 60s that I feel like smell dated, but the 90s fragrances have held up really well. I feel like they've been more absorbed into fragrance trends, those types of fragrances, as opposed to them dying away. So you still see some fragrances in the 90s style coming out. And so this is a woody aromatic fragrance. You get notes of lavender and juniper on top, a patchouli rose at the heart, and then some delicious sandalwood at the bottom. So again, it's a very classic fragrance structure as it's a fougere, so it works as this refined, expensive smelling fragrance, but because you have some of the more romantic notes, the sandalwood, the rose, it's still something that smells really, really good on skin, and again, doesn't smell too cold, doesn't smell too distant, and I don't think I've ever smelled Héritage on someone I've met before, so it's also super unique while still being very likable. I also love the juniper lavender top. I think something about it is a bit unexpected. Obviously not the lavender, but juniper here has something a bit like mango skin to me. And it's green, but with the actual juniper oil, I always get a hint of mango skin. And so that also makes it very interesting. I wouldn't say it's a fruity fragrance. Here it's very much of a green note. Again, it is still juniper, not mango itself, but it definitely lends to something very interesting in this fragrance. I would love to hear your thoughts on your favorite expensive smelling fragrances at all price points, whether they be eye-poppingly expensive or more affordable. And I will see you guys in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. So much love to my subscribers, and I will see you in the next video. Bye everyone.